I'll just take quick 2 minutes, Anshuk, and we should be good to start. And nice. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much once again for joining back on day 3. Um, we had a wonderful last 2 days, beautiful engagement, and some very, very insightful sessions from number of speakers. Thank you very much for staying until day 3. And the main crux of the program, the climax of the program we had in, and we have got so many other insightful sessions lined up today as well. We've got again um, Anshuk going to present about exploring the Meta platforms, the Google platforms. That is going to be like the eye opener for many of us here. I'm looking forward for it because we all know certain things. At least I know certain things at a surface level, and not into deeper stuff. But Anshuk today is going to deep dive on those platforms. That's going to help us understand, where should we invest, how, for which scenarios, etc. And followed by that, we will have a presentation from Sachi on web push notifications, because this is something very new that's come up recently. And from the push out team, we have a presentation lined up to say like how we could complement your email marketing, SMSs and WhatsApp channels along with the web push notifications. And followed by that, we will have Anshuman from Shopify presenting our Shopify Plus program. What does it cover, and whom does it actually apply to, and what are all the different features, and how it can help grow your business, and who are all the existing merchants who are actually using Plus and have grown, right? So we will be able to understand a lot about Plus. And the very last session, we will, not a session, it's a thanks and ramp up session, but that also has your what do you call the secret of this program, or whatever the best gift that we could get you guys from this program, which is the exclusive benefits from the partners, right? So we will unreveal that at the end of the day today. But for now, again, wanted to reiterate on the housekeeping stuff. We are going to record again today all the sessions, and today after end of the day you will be getting an email from us on the location where you can access all our presentations and recorded sessions. So again, want to reiterate, like, please mute yourself, and whenever there is a question that you wanted to ask, please unmute yourself. And in parallel, you can ask your questions in the chat box as well. We will be able to help. And please do remember map2022@shopify.com for any queries. Over to you, Anshuk. We're all good to start the Friday session.
Thank you so much, Jagan. Let me just. I was telling Jagan that I should have more jokes and memes in my presentation because it's a Friday. But please don't expect them because I don't have them. So good afternoon, everybody. As you know, I'm one of the co-founders of Adyogi. So this is the third session I'm taking in the Merchant Accelerator program. Thank you so much to Shopify team for organizing it. So on Wednesday, we spoke about some of the MECE matrices. I spoke about 6 MECE matrices specifically for determining the profitability of any store. Yesterday, we spoke specifically on festive season. We covered some hacks of what brands have used to scale during the festive season. What we'll do today is we'll go a little deeper into the Meta platform and subsequently into the Google platform. And the intent, primarily, I know all of you must already be running your Facebook ads and Instagram ads and Google ads. So the idea of this session would be that if I can add something to your knowledge, maybe those 2 or 3 things which you may not be doing, which you can take away from today's session and maybe go back and implement to your campaigns. And even if you see like a 5% efficiency, I think it will be worth everybody's time and the effort we have put in. So that's going to be the agenda. A few takeaways. I know many of you would be looking to scale your campaigns over the coming months. What we have seen in Meta is there is always, or Meta or any ad platform, there is always a scale versus efficiency conundrum, so to say, that if you scale, the efficiency might come down. If you want a very high efficiency, you might have to scale down. So what I try to answer this and maybe give you some idea on how to overcome this, which effectively means how to scale on Meta or Facebook, Instagram rather, without compromising on efficiency. We'll talk about a small case study, but more importantly, I talk about a funnel-based approach to creating these campaigns. I know many of you might already be using funnel-based approach, but like I said, a few additions here and there could definitely help. Something around optimizing budget across these campaigns. And towards the end, I will also share a recommended campaign structure, which in my opinion is actually going to be the key takeaway for today, honestly. This recommended campaign structure is what we use at Adyogi, and this has gone through 6-7 years of iterations. So hopefully you should be able to get a few things out of this recommended campaign structure. Just this is something you all know about. So what we have is I've created this Venn diagram sort of a thing that look, when you look at your customers, there will be a bunch of customers who are buying your products impulsively. These would mostly be the people coming from platforms like Facebook and Instagram. There would be a set of customers who are searching for your products. Mostly they will come from Google, specifically Google search or Google shopping campaigns. What we have seen is across most categories, especially if you are in the apparel or the fashion space, the people who are buying your products impulsively tends to be higher than the people who are, let's say, searching for your products. And you can yourself think about, let's say you are buying it, how many times have you bought a t-shirt or a shirt when you actually in the morning had decided I'm going to buy it today, versus how many times when you have just bought it because you saw it on any of the social platforms, right? Versus you can also compare yourself when you walk into a mall, how many times do you go to a mall thinking I'm going to buy this particular product, versus how many times do you impulsively just like something and you buy. So that's how I think brands should also think about splitting between Facebook, Instagram, which is Meta, and Google, which is more intent, right? So ask yourself the question that what percentage of your customers are actually more impulse driven, and that's the amount of budget you should be putting into Meta. There are certain categories which are very high on intent. Let's say if you're selling Ayurveda, or you're selling, let's say, something related to health and wellness, then typically those are more intent categories. So you should ideally be spending more on Google and less on Meta. That's something which I'll cover in my next session also. But just a starting slide on how do you decide how much to spend on Meta platforms. For most DTC brands today, we have seen that the majority budget actually goes on Meta, which is why on the slide I have mentioned 60 to 80% of sales coming from Facebook, Instagram. Also emphasizes the importance of this particular discussion. This is the conundrum which I was talking about. There is always a sort of a double-edged challenge which any brand faces today. On one side, how do you scale your spends, which is a scale challenge, and on other side, how do you maintain efficiency, whether it is 3x, 4x, or 5x. So any brand owner today has to constantly sort of juggle between these two, and we have seen that there are ways you can actually overcome this struggle, which I'll try to cover in my subsequent slides. And like I do always, there's this case study which I talk about. This is Clarks. We all know Clarks. What they did very successfully is they scaled their online business from, let's say, 5% till about 2 to 3 years ago to 30% very recently. And this was done keeping efficiency more or less constant. So the question is, if Clarks was able to do that, Clarks, of course, is a big offline brand, but as an online only brand also, there are a lot of learnings we can get from this. And before we jump in, this is actual data of Adyogi clients. I just thought that I will just plot it into a nice spend versus ROAS chart. And as you can see, on the x-axis, we have spend. On the y-axis, you have ROAS, ROAS, which is efficiency. The ones on the right are the ones which are spending very heavily but not getting very good efficiency, so they have an efficiency problem. The ones on the top left are the ones which are spending less but getting a lot of efficiency, which again is a scale problem. As a DTC brand owner today, you ideally want to be on the second quadrant, which is top right, where you have good spends and good efficiency, which effectively means very high revenue. So very few brands you can see are in that quadrant. The point is, what can a brand do to move from, let's say, left to right, or let's say bottom to top? Bottom to top is increasing efficiency, left to right is increasing scale. So before we jump into it, I think we have a poll here. So Aman, my teammate, is here. Aman, can you help us launch our first poll? Yes. So the poll is, what percentage of the current ad spend are you currently utilizing for Meta? Meta is, of course, Facebook and Instagram put together, and maybe even WhatsApp. So we've got around a good number of votes. We'll just wait for another 10-15 seconds. So we'll be ending the poll now, and the results are quite surprising as per what I had guessed. So very, very interesting results. I think all of you must have been able to see this. Honestly, if you had asked me to predict the poll results, I would have said 80% of people would have said greater than 90% or 70 to 90%. But when I see the results, I can see that majority of people are either spending less than 50% on Meta or 50 to 70% on Meta. So firstly, I think this is a good development, because too much dependency on one single platform is generally not recommended. And I'm assuming if you're spending less on Meta, then you must be spending more on Google, which is also a great step, because like we discussed yesterday also, Google CPCs are typically much lower than Meta CPCs. So very interesting results. Of course, let's go back to our presentation for the day. So like I said, I'll talk about funnel-based approach, and I'm sure you would have seen this slide or this approach earlier also. This is one of the standard marketing funnels. But the reason I refer to this again and again is because when it comes to Meta, funnel-based campaigns actually work best. So what is this funnel-based campaign? At the top, you have people who have never heard about your brand. These are your prospect campaigns. Then in the middle, you have people who have interacted with you either on your social pages or have come to your website homepage. These are the people who know about your brand but probably haven't explored the brand much. We call this as a consideration stage. Then you have people who have come on the product pages, who have added products to cart but may not have made a purchase. This is the conversion stage. And the bottom, you have your customers. So typically what works on Meta is to have different set of campaigns for each stage of the funnel, and more importantly, different type of structure and optimization at each stage. And today, the bulk of the discussion today is going to be around exactly this, that how do you set up your campaigns at each stage, and what should they contain, how should you optimize for them. So I'll pick up the first one at the top, which is your prospect campaign. And because we said we'll get into the depth of Meta, what I have put together is, let's say if you're creating your prospect campaign, I know many of you would have done that on Facebook, and you would have realized you have to answer how should I optimize my campaign, within campaign, which ad set should I be putting, within these ad sets, what should my ad contain. So these are the three questions which anybody creating any campaign on Meta or even Google has to answer. And I'll try to answer these questions one by one. Firstly, for the ad, I think we have covered most of it in the last two sessions. whether it was marketing metrics or it was festive. So I'll try to maybe briefly recap what we discussed yesterday. So very simply, if you're showing an ad on Facebook, Google, make sure you show the price, make sure the call to action is shop now. If it's a discounted, put a strike through. The discount coupon code can be in the ad copy, and make it as attractive as possible. So the images should be very attractive. Try to use emoticons in the ad message, like when you can see that small heart in the ad message. So all these are best practices when you're creating ad copy, which we spoke about yesterday also. We also spoke about this, that you should land people on the product page as much as possible. So your carousel should contain actual products and actual images of products, and land people on the respective product pages, rather than more like a brand image and landing people on the home page. Like we also discussed, that landing people on the home page may be okay during the sales season, but again, it should not be for more than 10 to 20% of your budget. And we spoke about using the right ad format. So if you are in the fashion or apparel space, then image ads work really well. Go for carousels, go for newsfeed ads. But if you are in the health and wellness, or let's say Ayurveda space, then like we said, images cannot explain the USP of the product. Very difficult to understand how is this bottle of Ayurveda different from the other 50 brands, and nobody has the patience to read the entire ad copy and the USPs on the images of the product. So for these spaces, if you're health and wellness or Ayurveda or beauty, we recommend at least 80% of the budget on Meta to go into video creatives. So make sure you pick up the right creative based on the particular industry. And just to recap, video creatives does not mean production ready, studio ready videos. We have seen amazing results come from TikTok style videos where the founder himself or herself talks about the product, or a micro influencer talks about it, or a customer talks about it, something which we call as UGC, or user generated content. So that's on the ad, nothing new. I think we've all kind of gone through it earlier also. But when it comes to targeting on Meta, I think that's where the real, I would say, jump can come in. So number one rule of Meta targeting is try to keep your campaigns slightly broad. Now, I know a lot of people come to me and say, look, I want to run a campaign in Mumbai, especially in the vicinity of, let's say, the South Bombay, where all the HNIs live. Conceptually, it sounds great, but when we execute this on Meta, the results have never been promising, primarily because when you're targeting a very small area, and South Bombay is small compared to the entire India, of course, the CPM rates on Meta go up, which means if you were spending earlier 100 rupees for your 1,000 impressions, you may now be spending 400 rupees for your 1,000 impressions, which effectively means that no matter the jump in conversion rate, you will still end up with lower efficiencies, purely because you are paying 4x for reaching out to those audiences. So typically we recommend running either an all India campaign, or a top 200 city campaign, or a top 65 city campaign. Now, what you need to understand is, even if you run 200 city campaign, does not mean that your impressions are going waste in tier 2, tier 3 cities, because Meta itself has a very nice conversion optimization. So they will figure out where you are getting most response from, and impressions will only be shown to those particular cities. So even if you run 200 cities, you might figure out that Bombay takes up 20% of your budget and Delhi takes up 15% of your budget, which is totally fine. And you will figure out that the 100th city may not be getting a lot of budget, which is also fine, because Meta has automatically identified where responses will come from. Second on Meta is lookalike. I'm sure all of you have used lookalike campaigns, but lookalike works beautifully well. So figure out what's the right lookalike for your brand. I'll tell you what I mean by right lookalike. Typically, lookalike, the recommended size of the base audience is around 5,000 plus people. So if you have 5,000 customers, create a lookalike of customer. If you have 5,000 add to carts, create a lookalike of add to cart. Or if you have 5,000 traffic on the website, then create a lookalike of website traffic. a good practice is to create multiple lookalikes. Does not mean that we should create only one lookalike or only of customers. And if you're at a stage where your customer base is really huge, then you might want to filter the customer base and create a lookalike of only the best performing customers or the high AOV customers. The idea is, depending on the stage of the brand, identify the right set of lookalikes. Like I said, even when I spoke about cities, also applies for age and gender. Gender, of course, if you're a men brand and men, and women brand and women, but when it comes to age, be a little more relaxed in the age range. I have seen brands saying that I want to target only 30 to 35-year-old men. Unless there is a very strong reason to target only them, try to be a little more relaxed in the age. The same logic applies. Then Meta does a good optimization when it comes to age and location. Detailed expansion can be switched on, works quite well. Third, for today's, not many of you may know that on Meta, there are, on Facebook and Instagram, there are interests of specific brands. And these are mostly bigger brands. So maybe the brand which you are running is not an interest on Facebook yet, but I'm sure once you scale it, it might become one. But right now, if you see something like a Shoppers Stop or a Forever 21 or a Myntra, H&M, Zara are all interests on Meta, which effectively means that people who have liked their pages, people who have commented on posts, people who have mentioned, let's say, any of the brand names in their posts, they automatically tag them as interested in these brands. So this could be one of the targeting which can work really well. So identify the top brands or the big brands which are in the same price range as your product, maybe the same category, whether it is ethnic or whether it is Western, or even when it's from a health and wellness perspective, and see if those are interests on Facebook. If they are interests, then typically we have seen that these ad sets perform really well. So those were the 3 pointers regarding whom to target from an ad set perspective. Campaign, of course, is the topmost structure hierarchy. When it comes to campaign, usually for direct to consumer brands, what we have seen work very well is either a conversions campaign or a catalog sales campaign. We would not recommend running a brand awareness or a reach or a traffic or an engagement campaign, purely because my sense is India is a very vast geography. We have a total of 350 million people on Facebook. What we have seen is when you run a traffic campaign, you end up spreading your budget too thin. And we have seen a lot of times that Facebook ends up showing ads into, let's say, tier 3, tier 4, or let's say cities where they don't get any conversions, but a lot of traffic comes from those cities. So in a way, the idea is you get a lot of junk traffic if you're running a traffic campaign. Instead, what I would recommend is, if the objective is to get more traffic on the website, then consider running something on the Google platform. We'll talk more about it in the next session. By something, I mean something like a Discovery or a YouTube. They tend to drive much better traffic of very good quality compared to a Facebook traffic campaign. So on Facebook, our recommendation is conversions and catalog sales. Now within campaign, of course, objective is only one of the things. There are multiple options on Facebook. So go with automatic placements unless there is a very definite need to run it only on Instagram or only on stories. We have done a lot of testing. In almost all cases, automatic works better. Optimize for conversion events, of course, but within conversion events also, we highly recommend optimizing for the purchase event and not necessarily the add to cart or the view content event, because we have also seen that when you optimize for add to carts, ironically, you end up getting a lot of add to carts, but the conversion post add to cart is not that healthy, which effectively means that you get a lot of add to carts, but you don't get enough conversions or enough purchases. So the recommendation would be to optimize for purchases. And again, small things here, campaign level CBO works really well. Again, as much as possible, if you have multiple ad sets in a campaign, run a campaign level optimization. also makes life much easier. You don't have to put budget in each ad set manually and continue to optimize it. So these are some of the key setup when it comes to running a prospect campaign. We spoke about few best practices of ads, we spoke about ad set, and we spoke about campaign. Of course, in subsequent slides, we'll talk about the middle funnel and the bottom funnel, and towards the end, an ideal campaign structure for Meta. Before we get there, we have one more poll. So if Aman can help us launch the second poll. Yes, so we have the poll live. What is your current customer acquisition cost on Meta? I think a lot of you have been spending on Meta, so this will be a very interesting question. We'll just wait for another 10-15 seconds. We already got a lot of responses. So I'll be ending the poll now, and I think you must be able to see the results on the screen. I think interesting results. So around 30% of people are getting less than 500 acquisition cost. I must tell you, you guys are lucky folks. So I don't think so you really have many takeaways from my presentation. Don't tinker so much in your campaigns. Your campaigns are running perfectly fine. People who have acquisition cost, another 30% greater than 900, I feel there is some scope of optimization there, because like I was telling yesterday also, 600 to 900 is the range we see across most clients. And of course, the balance 30% are in that range. So pretty much, I think you are there already. Some optimization here and there can help. But great to see so many of us actually getting less than 500 acquisition cost, which is a very good range on Meta. So just continuing on the deck, so we spoke about the prospect campaign, and moving to the next set of campaign, which is your engage campaign. So these are people who have already visited your website or have interacted on social pages, whether it is Facebook or Instagram. So the question is, how do we target them? Fairly straightforward. But before we get there, I just wanted to show the screenshot of Google Analytics. Not many of you would know that there is a chart on Google Analytics which talks about the time lag between the time when someone lands on your website the first time to the time when they make the purchase. And I think these numbers are not very legible, but I'll help you read through them. So roughly about 65% of the sales or 65% of the people landing on the website for this particular brand were purchasing on the same day. But there were a balance 35% of the people which came back on the second day, the third day, the 10th day, the 15th day, and the 30th day to make the purchase. And that's exactly the reason why remarketing campaigns are super important. As we can see on this particular brand, till about 30th day, most of the sales they are able to get. After 30 is only 5% of the balance sales. So usually most remarketing campaigns we have seen are either set up till 30-day audience or maybe 60-day audience. Beyond that may not be very applicable. This is again something we saw yesterday also, but when we speak about engage campaign are those people who have come on the home page or the social pages, but not necessarily the product page. A lot of brands I have seen typically set up their dynamic remarketing campaigns to target the product page audience and the add to cart audience. but they miss out on this audience who was slightly above the funnel, who would have interacted with them on social pages or come to their homepage, but never seen a product. So what is recommended here is to run a conversion campaign, not a catalog sales one, and put all these audience into one particular ad set and put your best performing creatives in front of these audience. We'll talk about it in the last slide when I show you the ideal campaign structure, but just to call out that don't miss out on this audience. We spoke about the engage campaign. The next one is something which I'm sure a lot of you must already be running, which is, like I said, people who have seen products or added products to cart. For them, a dynamic remarketing campaign is what works best on Meta. A few things about dynamic remarketing campaign. Of course, the objective of the campaign has to be catalog sales. This is a standard objective on Facebook and Instagram. But more importantly, the ad which we are showing to this audience should actually be more contextual. Like, for example, in this particular case, we are showing an ad of iJewels, and their ad copy says that you had added product to cart and can't wait to go home with you. So they're kind of adding some more context to it. So think about how do you want to add context, because the ad which you are showing to your add to cart audience or people who have viewed the product should be slightly different from what you are showing to the prospects. Because prospects have never heard of your brand, so you might want to introduce the brand to them, talk about the USP of the brand. But these people have already known about your brand. They have come to your website, visited a product, maybe even added the product to cart. So you don't necessarily need to introduce the brand again to them. Instead, you may want to create an urgency. And create an urgency can be done by either offering them a coupon code, or in this particular case, iJewels has written shop before it's out of stock, right? So in a way, telling the user that, look, you have seen this product, you probably like this product, but if you don't buy it now, it may go out of stock. So just work on the messaging in the dynamic remarketing campaign. The setup is more or less standard on Facebook. And this is the targeting option for dynamic remarketing campaign. Many of you would have already set it up. So there is an option to target people who have viewed or added to cart but not purchased. And the default option is 14 days. Usually we recommend a 30-day viewed or added to cart. So this particular setting on the Facebook panel works best for this audience. So that was the dynamic remarketing campaign. And at the bottom is your customer campaigns, which is to increase the loyalty of your customers. What my personal experience has been that when it comes to customer campaigns, Facebook and Google may not be the best platforms. We have seen great results come out of SMS, WhatsApp, email, push notifications. So make sure that if you want to increase the repeat customer, focus on those channels in addition to Facebook and Google. On Facebook, I think we spoke about yesterday, this is exactly same slide from yesterday, that make sure you are targeting your online customers and offline customers. Both Facebook and Google have this nice option where we can upload the email IDs and phone numbers from our POS system, and they match these email IDs and phone numbers to their audiences. So even if you're collecting email ID phone number on your physical stores, in case you have a physical store, then you can upload them on Facebook and Google. Same is true if you have some other source of collecting email IDs and phone numbers of customers, the same can be uploaded on Facebook and Google. So there's also a single campaign targeting all the customers. And in this specific case, we spoke about Clark's getting a very good ROAS from it. So that takes care of the setup for most of these campaigns. I think the key thing is, how do you optimize the budgets between these campaigns? And this is where I think what we have seen is typically the top campaign, which we saw was the prospect campaign. 40 to 60% of the overall budget should go into this campaign. And one thing to keep in mind is make sure that the ad sets are all completing the learning phase in the prospect campaign, because prospect is very big audience. For most brands, it would be like 50 million, 100 million. So unless Facebook is able to complete the learning, they may not be showing ads to the right people. Unlike engage and remarketing and dynamic remarketing, the audiences are very limited. These are people who have interacted with your brand. So effectively, conversion optimization or learning may not be as critical because the target customer is only so big. So for your consideration and conversion campaigns, we recommend roughly about 20 to 40% of the budget. That is the middle part of the funnel. One key learning here is there is a definite upper cap to this budget. So just because your middle funnel campaigns are giving a better ROAS than prospect, don't try to put more and more budget into the middle funnel campaign purely because it's a limited audience. The more budget you put, the lesser incremental sales will come from this audience. So just be cognizant of that. So which is why we have an upper cap on the amount of budget to the middle funnel, which is consideration and conversion. The last is loyalty, which is the customer data targeting. Again, not more than 5 to 10% of the budget should go into this campaign. Even for very large brands which have an offline presence, we have seen that 5% to 10% is the maximum which can go into the customer campaign. Again, don't fall into the trap that if the customer campaign is giving a better ROS, maybe a 4x, then continue to put more and more budget there. Because like I said, it's a very definite audience. More budget does not mean more sales. You might actually see that if you double the budget, the number of sales might remain the same, which effectively means that the ROS has dropped to half. So that's the sort of the last couple of slides for today. And I think a lot of takeaways come from this slide and the next slide. This is the recommended structure which we have seen. We have implemented this structure across most of our brands. And I'll try to walk you through some of this. So this is the prospect campaign structure which we use for most brands. There are 3 to 4 prospect campaigns, sometimes more if the budgets are very high, sometimes less. But the way we try to structure them is one campaign could be Reels and Story campaign. The first campaign at the top you can see is New Collection campaign. This is something which we spoke about when we talked about the festive also, that you are launching a new collection or you have new products, have a separate campaign for it. Then you have a Reel and a Story campaign, which is separate placement. Then we recommend a couple of campaigns for your top performing categories. So let's say if kurtas are doing very well, or let's say weight gain products are doing very well. So have a separate set of campaigns for your top 2 to 3 categories or 2 to 3 products. And the last one could be a catalog sales campaign for your prospects. We didn't talk about the setup today, but this is very similar to the remarketing, except it targets prospects instead of remarketing. In each of these campaigns, generally it's recommended to have at least 1 to 3 ad sets. We generally recommend a combination of lookalikes and personas. Personas are your interest-based ad sets. So have 1 lookalike, 1 interest-based, in some cases 2 interest-based ad sets also, but try to have at least 1 to 3 ad sets. In terms of ads, generally it's recommended that have ads of across multiple formats. So carousel, newsfeed, video, slideshow, try to use at least 2 to 3 formats. In case of story, of course, vertical ads are recommended. And in case of catalog sale, just try the in-stock ad. So that's about prospect. For remarketing, generally, the setup is much more simpler. So when we talk about engage, it's just one single engage campaign. You can pull in all the audiences into the engage campaign, which is your website visitors, page visitors, video view audience, all of them into one ad set. We don't typically recommend having too many ad sets there because it doesn't add much value. Plus the CPM usually goes high. So one campaign, one ad set. Point to note here is for your engage audience, try to have the best performing ads and try to keep rotating these ads on a regular basis. Last is your dynamic remarketing campaign, which is again very straightforward. Whatever product the user has seen on the website, the same product should be shown in the ad copy. So typically in stock, which effectively means all products to be shown to this audience. And for customers, again, show your best performing products. So all online, offline customers, show your newest launches or the best performing products. So that's a recommended structure, and sort of brings me to end of this presentation. We can probably take some time and pick up some Q&A.
Thank you very much, Anshuk. That was very, very, very detailed. I'm sure there are going to be multiple questions for you. I'll leave that to the audience now. I think Tanvi has raised her hand, followed by Prashant. So Tanvi,
Yeah, it's Bridge here, so I've logged in from her ID. So yeah,
okay.
so
Okay.
hi Anshu, thank you for that presentation. I had a long list of questions. I'll go one by one if it's okay. Hello,
Yes, Bridge.
am I audible?
Yes, Bridge.
Yeah. So what do you to evaluate the health of campaign or an ad set? What indicator do you see, and how much time do you give a campaign or an ad set to before
Right.
you start doing it?
So generally, what we recommend, Bridge, is good. What we recommend, Bridge, is I can hear a little bit of echo, Bridge, from your side. I can hear a little bit of echo.
Should be fine.
Great. So what we recommend, Bridge, is generally that for any ad set or campaign which you run, give it at least, I would say, time for a week or so, so that it can give you at least 10 to 15 conversions, and it can sort of, it may not still complete the learning, but it can actually give you some indicators of whether it's performing well or not. A sample budget which we recommend is 10,000 rupees for any ad set which you're running, before you decide to shut it down or before you decide that it's not working.
Okay, thank you. What is the kind of daily budget you recommend when you start a campaign before you scale it up or an ad set?
So it depends a lot on the overall budget of the brand. So what we recommend is, let's say your overall budget is maybe 3 lakh a month. Okay. Then when you divide it to daily, it comes to 10,000 a day. For 10,000 a day, we would recommend not more than 3 to 4 campaigns. Reason being that every campaign will have 1 or 2 ad sets. So generally, a good idea is each ad set should have a budget of at least 1,000 rupees. So that over a period of 7 days, it gets around 7,000 budget, and you're able to take a call on whether it's working or not. So to answer your question, at a budget of 3 lakh a month, you will have 3 to 4 campaigns, 8 to 10 ad sets, and each ad set will with 1,000 rupee budget. So when you're starting a new campaign, you may want to start, instead of maybe 2 to 3,000, maybe 1,000 or 1,500, and then scale it up from 1,500 to 2,000 or 3,000. Don't start with a very small budget, because then scaling up becomes very tough.
And for a running campaign, how do you see it health? Do you see its frequency or decreasing of CPA? How do you see? How do you keep it? How do you see when to stop it and when to move on?
Typically, 2 metrics help. One, of course, is the performance. So if your existing campaign continues to give good ROAS, then you may want to continue running it. Let's say the performance drops, then a simple metric is the frequency. If the frequency is above, let's say 1.5 or 2 for a prospect campaign, then it gives an indication that the campaign is saturated, and you may want to either create new ad sets within the campaign, or pause existing ad sets, or maybe create a completely new campaign. So that's how we are able to measure whether the campaign is performing or not. I hope that answered, Bridge. I hope that answered, Bridge.
Yes. Thank you. So I'm getting very poor response from conversion campaigns wherein I'm using creatives as a carousel or a DPA or a single image, but I'm getting good response from a catalog. That catalog might be catalog sales campaign or a catalog which I put in the ad level or in a conversion campaign. And so in your structure that you have presented, you have given a lot of emphasis on a creative campaign. So have you seen that trend that catalog campaigns are doing better than creative campaign, or it's just a thing that I am observing in my account?
So our experience has been, if the catalog size is large, and by large I mean greater than, let's say, 200 or 300 products, then we have seen catalog sales campaigns tends to perform better a lot of times. When the catalog size is small, like the case of most health and wellness brands, or the case of fashion brands which have a limited catalog, something like 50 products, 100 products, 150 products, then we usually see conversion campaigns doing quite well. And in those conversion campaigns, something like a custom ad or a news feed ad or a slideshow works better. In your case, I'm assuming you may have a larger catalog, which is why you are seeing this trend.
Yeah, I would have a 600 to 700 products in the catalog.
Got it. In your case, like you are saying, catalog sales campaign or a catalog ad in conversion campaign might actually work better.
And my last question is there a way to automate the feed of products into a catalog in Facebook?
There are integrations Facebook has with Shopify. So you can either download an app on Shopify to create a catalog directly on Facebook. There are several tools which can help you do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Tej. So we have a few more questions. Yeah.
Prashant, you want to go next? You are on mute, Prashant.
Yeah. So Anshu, I would like to know. I've heard about a tool called as Acme. Acme as in ACME. Okay. What they claim is they have got data and artificial intelligence, which maps the customers beyond Facebook and Meta. Hence, the audience don't get saturated. Okay. The cost of conversion is a separate matter, but at least audience don't get saturated. Is there anything similar available for end users, or it's only for the agencies, Acme?
Good question there, Prashant. What is now happening is, because of the whole iOS 14 and the talks of Pixel getting deprecated, there are a lot of tools which have come up on CDP. CDP is Customer Data Platform, effectively saying that you don't have to necessarily rely on Pixel for all your targeting on Facebook and Google. So some of these CDP tools are able to link your audience of Facebook outside of Facebook also, and provide you some functionalities of targeting which don't rely on Pixel. So I haven't come across Acme specifically, but my sense is Acme must be doing something similar. I'm not too sure about whether it's available only to agencies or to direct end customers.
Okay. Okay. Then in one of your slides, you talked about time lag.
Yes.
Okay. In my screen, I saw interactions, like first interaction, second interaction, third interaction. Is it interaction like as a session of the user, or it is the number of days it says? Like say first, I get maximum conversion for the first interaction, then second interactions, and then it like say goes down after third interactions. So is it a first day, second day, third day, or it is just an interaction, click or something?
Yes. So as far as I know, Google Analytics actually reports both. It reports the time lag in days also, which is 1 day, 2 day, 30 day. The screenshot which I showed was actually time lag in days. But I do know that Google Analytics also reports multi-funnel conversions, where it actually reports multiple interactions also. So in my opinion, you should be able to get both from Google Analytics.
Okay, I'll try to find that out. Then about remarketing campaigns, you mentioned. Shall we do remarketing for the people who are bounced off also? Because once they visit the page, they become part of the remarketing funnel. So shall we target them also, or anyway we should avoid them and like identify people who have spent more time on the page or something?
So this is see, my experience has been that already your remarketing audience is quite limited, right? By limited, I mean it's like 50,000 or 1 lakh, not something like 10 lakh or 20 lakh. So my experience has been that filtering remarketing audience further and making it narrow does not work well, because the CPM automatically goes up. So for most brands, we recommend that when you're running the remarketing campaign, put all the audience together: website audience, page audience, video view audience. All of it together could become like a 20,000, 50,000, 1 lakh, 2 lakh. And that becomes a good size to be targeting on Facebook. Of course, there are brands which are very big, something like a W for Women, which gets like maybe 1 lakh people per day. They may not want to do this. They might want to filter based on the time spent on the website.
Okay. Okay. And one more question about the tracking. We have not been able to identify people who are converted from Meta or who are converted from Google in Shopify after this last July thing. Is there a way, or is there a methodology, an application or something that can give us a clear idea? Because what happens, a person visits Facebook and then he goes to Google for searching, and then Google claims the thing. And Google works fantastically for Shopify, but Meta is not working that great. So is there a way that we can have clear bifurcation of the sales?
So increasingly, it's getting quite difficult now, like you rightly said. There are two ways it can be done. One, I'm sure you're already doing, is Shopify gives you the order data. And in the order data, you can link each order to a UTM campaign or a UTM source or a UTM medium. That's one way of doing it. Again, it's not 100% there, because attribution is not really white or a black. Second way is Google has multi-funnel conversions, where Google Analytics shows you cases where someone first came from Facebook and then came from Google and then made a purchase, or first came from Google and then came from Facebook and then made a purchase. So by default, Google Analytics shows only the last click conversion, where you rightly said that it gives all the credit to Google and the last click, which could have come from Google. But there is also a multi-funnel conversion in Google Analytics, where it shows you all the different clicks. Okay. Google Analytics also has an option to change the attribution. So instead of last click, you can actually do first click attribution in Google Analytics, which will solve your problem that it will give weightage to where the traffic is coming from and not necessarily your last remarketing campaign. I hope that answered.
Is that fine, Prashant?
Yeah, I could not hear it because there's some time lag, but I'll get that to the. Yeah, that's fine, Jagan. Yeah.
Awesome. I think we'll take one last question for this particular session. Ananya?
Hi, Anshuk. Wanted to know what kind of A/B testing do you generally do with static ads that are there? Like, what do you change fonts much, the colors, or where the placement is? So, what kind of testing do you do, and how many ads are you usually A/B testing when running one?
Yes. Thanks for the question, Ananya. Usually, I know there is an A/B test feature on Facebook where you can actually conduct an A/B test and run it between two different creatives and see which one is performing versus not. Typically, we don't use A/B testing a lot. What we usually do is we have some best practices for the creative. So we know what sort of image, what sort of ad text, emoticons, and coupon codes work usually well. What we end up doing is we use those best practices and create 3 or 4 different creatives. It could be of different products, sometimes even the same product, and put them all in one single ad set on Facebook, and let Facebook figure out which particular ad is doing well, and Facebook automatically puts most budget behind that ad. So in a way, we do less of A/B testing, and we pretty much put them together to Facebook and let Facebook optimize between the creatives.
Got it. Okay. Makes sense. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Anshuk. I think that's a good 1 hour. I think you definitely need a break, if not us, right? So we'll take a quick short 5 minutes break, and we'll be back at 3:05, right? Where we will do Anshuk's last session on exploring Google platforms, right? I think that's going to be like one more exciting session that's awaiting us. So let's be back at 3:05 p.m. See you soon.
See you.